Look, every single Muslim has to face the challenge of trying to balance deen and dunya. And you've heard this before. This is especially true with young Muslims. Muslims like me, probably Muslims like you. Like I'm 16 years old, right? So this is a major problem in our life. There's school, there's, maybe studies I need to focus on, but also my deen and, improving in my Islamic life as well. But there are important steps you need to take to improve both of these things at once. And alhamdulillah, I feel like I've made progress in both of these and kind of balanced it in a way that fits me. And again, the way you're going to do it in your life is probably different than the way I'm going to do it because we live different lives, of course. But I think there are a few overarching things that you need to understand that helped me to balance my deen and dunya. After I implemented these things, my life became so much more organized. And I really think that if you implement them too, inshallah, your life is going to be a lot better. Now, of course, just a disclaimer, I'm not a Muslim prodigy or anything. But I'm just another 16-year-old kid, probably just like you, trying to improve in my deen. And I'm just trying to share what worked for me. And these are a few things that helped me a lot when it comes to improving my deen, as well as my dunya and balancing them both. The first thing, and I believe this is one of the most important things you can have in your life, is setting 2 or 3 clear goals. Because this sets direction in your life. If you have no goals, especially at this young age, like what are you doing with your time? That's what I want to ask you. Because, as we're young, we have an abundance of time and energy. So that's a perfect opportunity to work towards our goals. But if you don't have goals, like what are you even doing with your time? You're probably spending it on social media, wasting time, and doing whatever you really feel like. And that's not going to lead you towards success in either your dunya or your deen, which is the worst of all fates. So what I would recommend for you is to have 2 or 3 goals. And there are a few criteria that you should also make sure these are in. Number 1 is that they should be Islamic centered. That doesn't mean necessarily that they all have to be Islamic goals, but they should all be things that improve you in your dunya and also in your deen in a way. So for example, if your goal is to be fit, for example, so eat healthy, work out, these things I would say are Islamic centered because working on your body and being healthy is something that is so pleasing to Allah, right? So as long as it's pleasing to Allah, I would say it's an Islamic centered goal. Basically, just anything that isn't obviously haram, right? For example, making haram money. You don't want that to be a goal. But if it's just making money in general, if it's becoming fit, if it's becoming healthy, of course, those things are super important. And what I would also recommend is one out of those maybe 3 goals, you choose to be a specific Islamic goal. So maybe for you, you're trying to become a hafiz. So one of the goals is memorize the Quran. Or maybe it's learn the Arabic language. Basically, make it something that's specifically Islamic. And then you can make the other 2 whatever else, right? Maybe your studies, fitness, whatever you can think of. But that way, you're kind of balancing it because some of your goals are Islamic and some of your goals are this dunya. But at the end of the day, all of them are going to hopefully, inshallah, please Allah. Another thing I want you to take into account is to make these goals high vision. So what do I mean by that? I mean, make them very ambitious. Make them very big goals. Because if I'm being honest, there's no point to having a small goal. Because if you accomplish the goal, it's, like who really cares? It's a small goal anyway. If you don't accomplish the goal, it's even worse. And remember, success comes from Allah. So if Allah gives you success in a big goal, it's going to be amazing, right? Alhamdulillah. And remember, you have dua as a tool. So if you keep making dua for big goals, you should, inshallah, be able to make those happen. But yeah, as a general rule, I would say make your goals very ambitious because there's no reason not to, right? You want to change your life. So why would you not want to set your life in a direction to be able to change it? Another thing that's important is to cut out influences and external desires from your life and to really understand what your own goals are. So for example, a lot of people see rich lifestyles, right? Maybe the lifestyle of a high value man, and they see it on media, they see it on YouTube, and they want to be like that. So what happens is those desires get implanted onto them. What that means is it's not their real desires. They don't really want a Lamborghini. They don't really want a big house. Maybe that's something they want a little bit, but that's not their true inner desires. That's what's implanted on them by influence. Maybe all they truly want is just a good family, a decent house at least, and, good children. And that's not a complex lifestyle. But what happens is when you go on the media, when you go on YouTube, you get bombarded with other desires, right? Because other people's influence can certainly lead you to desiring things that are not good for you. So another thing you need to do is clear up your influences. Make sure you're not being influenced by bad people. And overall, I want you to just look at like the type of media you consume, for example, the YouTubers you watch. If you watch people that lead you towards a haram way, then most likely you're going to have haram desires. And of course, it's never going to end well for you. The last part of accomplishing your goals is to always make dua, because success only comes with Allah, of course. So I want you to make sure you're always making dua, probably every single day. And the way you do that is by getting attached to your goals, right? You should actually feel ambition to get to your goals. And that way you're going to always make constant dua for it. The second step to balancing deen and dunya is to have a task list or a routine. And this one is super, super important for organizing your day. Now, let's say you have your goals, right? Let's say you have 3 goals. What I want you to do is make a task for each of these 3 goals, or maybe multiple tasks. But let's just say one big task for each of the goals. So if your goal is memorization, then your big task for the day is to spend an hour or 30 minutes or however long you want memorizing. Now you have a task list of each of the tasks you need to be, accomplishing your goals throughout the day. That way, you have a very clear-cut direction in your day and very clear-cut schedule of what you need to do. Also, make sure you schedule these 3 tasks in the day. When are you doing it? Maybe it's in the morning, maybe it's after you come home from school, or, maybe it's before you sleep. In general, I would recommend to do things as early as possible in the morning, because mornings are blessed. As the Prophet ﷺ tells us, that the morning is a time with the most barakah, and you should really be productive during this time. Also, make sure you have your priorities set in place. Make sure you're doing work first before, entertainment, YouTube. What I would say, a thing that really helped me is doing my work and then setting my entertainment later in the day. So what that means is I allow myself to maybe watch videos or watch YouTube or just do any of that, but only after I finish my work. That way I make sure I'm doing my work on time and, I'm actually finishing my schedule and going towards my goals. But at the same time, I'm not going to just spend the whole day working and have no relaxing time. Another thing is to be focused when you're doing work. When you're focused, it's like a multiplier on your productivity as long as you're doing the work. So someone who works for 30 minutes with hyper focus can probably get the same amount of work done as someone who works for an hour with, distracted focus and who's, for example, constantly checking notifications. So if you feel like you're constantly crunched on time, what I would recommend you is really look at how much you're focusing, because a lot of times what you see is people who say they're constantly working and constantly strapped on time. They're usually just working, but they're not working focused. They have notifications, they're constantly checking different tabs, and that's not real work. And finally, in terms of your routine, I would recommend you to add small habits throughout your day. Things that are related to your goal, but that are little small things, right? Not big tasks. So for example, if you're memorizing Quran, your big task is to spend 30 minutes to an hour memorizing. But you could also spend 5 minutes, revising, or 5-10 minutes revising, and add that as something you do in your day. Maybe you spend the time memorizing in the beginning of the day, and you spend time revising, before you go to bed or towards the end of the day. The last part of balancing deen and dunya is to manage your influences and distractions. And of course, one of the biggest culprits of this is wasting time. Bro, social media is destroying our lives because of how much time it's wasting. Imagine if all the time you wasted on social media and YouTube and video games and all of that stuff, you spent that towards learning your deen, or, even just in a business. Bro, you'd probably be like a millionaire by now. If you're trying to balance your deen and dunya, you don't have the capacity to afford wasting time. We only have limited time in this life, and every second, it's precious because it's finite. So you just can't be wasting time. You have to be spending it towards something that's important to you. And the last thing I want to explain to you is stimulus level. So if you feel demotivated, if you feel like you don't want to work, if you feel like work is boring, then I would say most likely you are overstimulated. So what that means is you watch, you pretty much get too much stimulation. You watch too much YouTube, maybe you go on social media too much. Basically, your dopamine is too high. What that means is things that are going to produce less dopamine are going to be boring to you. Things like work. There are some people that find work enjoyable. And the reason why is because they're not overstimulated. They don't constantly watch YouTube shorts or YouTube videos and binge like that. Instead, their main enjoyment comes from work because they don't have anything that's more enjoyable than work. Now, at first, that might sound depressing, like they have nothing enjoyable other than work. But if you actually do this, then if work is the most stimulating thing for you, you're going to enjoy work. And that's a great life, bro. You're going to have work that, you're working towards your goals and you actually enjoy it. Why would you not want that? So what I would say to you is you also have to work on changing your stimulus level. Cut out, distractions, overstimulations, and that's going to make your work a lot easier and actually enjoyable. Anyway, that's all I have for this video. Don't stop making dua to Allah. Assalamu alaikum.